volcanic eruptions.
It was insane.
Violent debris flows.
If you were in that particular area, there was no survivors. None.
Pyroclastic flows.
They're the ultimate volcanic hazard.
Volcanoes are both mesmerizing and terrifying.
There's a sense of excitement, being close to something so beautiful yet so dangerous.
Yet these deadly planetary eruptions don't only tear apart and forge our world.
It looked like a desert across the ocean.
Their total impact can inject life into a dying part of the planet.
We have life being transported around the world's oceans.
And they could one day help with interplanetary exploration.
They've also attracted the interest of space agencies.
Hurricanes, tsunamis, earthquakes.
This was the deadliest tornado on record.
The impact can be devastating.
God completely wiped it off the map.
We step inside the disaster.
We were running for our lives.
It hits like a freight train.
And unravel the unexpected and sometimes jaw-dropping total impact.
Believe it or not, some good can come from these monster storms.
Tourists stand along a hillside in Guatemala when the nearby El Fuego volcano erupts, sending lava and plumes of smoke into the air. Volcanoes have maimed and destroyed civilizations since the beginning of recorded history. Yet on this day, everyone pulls out a camera. Like many tourists, this is the main event they've come for, seeing a volcano erupt up close. They have no idea that it's only the opening act to a deadly showstopper. Guatemala is known for its ancient ruins, jungles, and breathtaking volcanic landscape. Every year, over 2 million tourists visit to hike its 37 volcanoes. Situated just outside the beautiful city of Antigua, Guatemala, El Fuego volcano, Spanish for volcano of fire, is famous for being the most active.
I was volunteer English teacher for roughly 3 weeks. Just at the beginning of summer, my second weekend, me and some people in our homestay decided to take a hike up the Acatenango volcano, which its main attraction was the Fuego volcano.
The hike begins with an overnight stay at base camp, where the unpredictable El Fuego looms in the distance.
We stayed up a little late that night, then we started seeing spewing. It was going so high, it was amazing. It just looked so cool. We could feel it for sure. Kind of sounded like a really aggressive thunderstorm. You just felt like someone is like kind of shaking your mattress. It was just an adrenaline rush for the whole night.
Sophia has lived in the area her whole life and never ceases to be captivated by the beauty of El Fuego.
It's always a spectacle, especially at night. We always thought about it as something beautiful that you could enjoy. There's also a sense of excitement to being close to something that's so beautiful yet so dangerous.
One of Sophia's favorite pastimes is photographing the iconic site.
I woke about 5 a.m. and I did what I usually do, go and grab a cup of coffee and go to the garden and watch the volcano. And I thought I can call my friends and we can meet up and go make photos.
Aiden and his new friends begin their morning with a hike up the mountain to view El Fuego and then head back to the city.
It was just kind of one of those fun, challenging experiences, and it was so worth it getting to the top. It's one of those things you never get to experience in your life, seeing the active volcano.
Standing 3,700 meters tall, El Fuego is a stratovolcano.
Stratovolcanoes are built of lava, which is more sticky and doesn't like to flow so far. These pile up around the vent, and they build stratovolcanoes, such as Mount Fuji in Japan, or Vesuvius in Italy, or Mount Rainier in the United States.
These tall, steep, cone-shaped stratovolcanoes are considered the most dangerous formations and make up about 60% of the world's volcanoes. Eruptions are extremely difficult to predict, but deep within the volcano, magma can act as a plug. As gases build, so does pressure, until the volcano explodes. It can happen without warning, shooting out superheated gases, ash, lava, and debris. At up to 1,200 degrees Celsius, they can burn and suffocate everything in their paths.
Volcanoes are the mechanism by which the Earth loses heat. Magma is a way of removing the heat from within the Earth and distributing into the Earth's surface, ocean, and atmosphere. Volcanic eruptions are triggered usually by more magma entering the magma chamber under the volcano and pushing out the magma that's already there or mixing with it and making it rise up to the surface.
The rising magma is caused by the shifting of tectonic plates.
The tectonic plates are crunching together, or one is sliding underneath another in destructive plate margins. The Pacific Ring of Fire, that's a whole zone around the Pacific Ocean where the Pacific plate is being what we call subducted or taken down underneath the surrounding plates that encircle the Pacific.
While larger eruptions of El Fuego have wiped out crops and led to evacuations, they're quite rare. The volcano is a tourism hotspot, with small eruptions every 15 to 20 minutes. Later that morning, Sophia and her friend head out to take pictures.
You couldn't see anything, not even the volcano, so I decided to go back home.
At the base of El Fuego, Antonio is just wrapping up his morning shift at a golf course.
Terminamos de trabajar ese día, 12 menos 10. Ya me dirigí a guardar el carrito en el sótano del hotel. Cuando vi para el volcán, se veía fuerte que venía para abajo. Fui a decirle a mis compañeros de trabajo que salieran a ver el volcán. Y pues decidieron ahí la seguridad que tenía ahí del hotel evacuar.
For locals like Antonio, the active volcano is nothing to panic about, and he heads home for lunch. As Sophia and her friend are driving home, El Fuego rumbles to life.
As we were driving home and going through these communities that are close to the volcano, there were rocks falling from the sky. At one point we stopped and I opened the door and I picked one, and it was almost as big as my hand. That's what I said, we need to get out of here.
Back at his hostel, Aiden sees the ash begin to fall.
The ash pretty much covered almost everything. I'd say it's similar to like some heavy snow.
Near El Fuego, Antonio is just about to have lunch with his family.
Como a eso de las 2:30 que me dijo mi suegra, le dije yo, mire, está fuerte el volcán, va a salir. Y me dijo, primero Dios, ya no pasa nada, ¿verdad? Fue podríamos decir, la última convivencia con mi suegra.
A plume of ash billows 10,000 meters up into the air. It's so large, it's visible from space.
We didn't know it was going to be an unusual eruption because we were always expecting lava. And lava is something that you can deal, you can live with it, you can outrun lava.
While lava has been clocked flowing downhill at up to 60 kilometers an hour, in most cases, it travels at less than 1 kilometer an hour. At 5 times less than average walking speed, it can easily be outpaced. But something much deadlier than lava is suddenly unleashed.
But there was nothing that could let us know that this time, instead of lava, there was going to be pyroclastic flows.
Pyroclastic flows are deadly. Most people consider them to be the ultimate volcanic hazard.
As a massive eruption explodes from El Fuego in Guatemala, Eugenio, a volunteer firefighter, and his colleagues head towards the volcano.
Nosotros fuimos, era ayudar a evacuar las personas que estaban cerca del volcán de Fuego.
But many villagers refuse to leave. To locals, there's nothing terribly unusual about a volcano that's seen daily activity since 2002. But familiarity can be dangerous. The Santa Maria volcano had been dormant for more than 500 years when it suddenly erupted in 1902, killing 6,000 people. It was one of the biggest eruptions of the 20th century, reaching 28 kilometers into the stratosphere. The ash buried villages and spread as far as San Francisco, 4,000 kilometers away. A blast of this magnitude today would be devastating.
Ellos estaban acostumbrados a escuchar al volcán con los retumbos y con la erupción del volcán. Entonces ellos decían que eso todo era normal. Para mí que las pobres personas no tuvieron una advertencia antes de lo que eso es lo que iba a pasar.
At the most, many are expecting some lava.
Para nosotros era como que la lava también iba a agarrar su trayectoria en la barranca. Pero prácticamente se llenó allá en la parte de arriba y fue donde se pasó para el lado de nosotros.
As Antonio watches, things take a deadly turn. Instead of dissipating into the atmosphere, the massive plume of smoke and ash above the volcano begins to collapse like an avalanche.
Pyroclastic flows are generated from the explosive cloud above the volcano. The parts that haven't mixed with the atmosphere that are more dense are going to plunge towards the ground and start flowing down the flanks of the volcano.
Traveling at up to 700 kilometers an hour, they're impossible to outrun for any distance.
Íbamos para en toda la carretera cuando se dejó venir eso. Decidí correr, ya era un caos. Entonces les grité yo a los que están todavía, corran, métanse a sus casas, protéjanse porque el humo.
Antonio is barely able to make it back inside his house.
Realmente estaba mi familia, mi esposa, mi hermana, mis hijos y mi sobrino. Pero se puede escuchar, ¿verdad? Los gritos de todos los vecinos.
Eugenio and his team make it to their vehicle, but no farther.
Yo solo vi allá lejos que mis dos compañeros se desaparecieron entre las nubes, ¿verdad? Entonces, nosotros, yo traté manera de salir de ahí, pero ya cuando quise salir con mi vehículo fue cuando el vehículo se apagó y me atrapó porque al final... Entonces dije yo, aquí nos quedamos.
Eugenio and his fellow volunteer firefighters are trapped in their stalled vehicle as scalding hot rocks and ash engulf them.
Ese gran calor que se sentía ahí dentro del vehículo, que porque están viendo ayuda a la gente. Pero si bajamos y si también nos quedamos con ellos quemados, ¿verdad?
Pyroclastic flows are hot. They're submagmatic temperatures, 1,000 degrees centigrade or 800 degrees centigrade. We cook meat at about 200 degrees centigrade or less. And so anything biotic, anything living in the path of a pyroclastic flow is going to be subjected to such high temperatures that it's immediately incinerated. If you're caught in a pyroclastic flow, then unfortunately you would die. If not from the heat, from the ingestion of particles into your lungs.
The fine particles have been compared to inhaling slivers of glass.
I think that's an interesting thing. This one piece will make 52 layers.
Watch on mobile devices or the big screen. All for free. No subscription required.
For Sophia, it's simply luck that she's still alive.
Everything was completely destroyed. If I hadn't taken the decision and I would have ventured further than I usually do, I would have been in the middle of everything and I wouldn't be alive today.
Eugenio surveys the damage. He's lucky the car has not been buried.
Gracias a Dios, el vehículo nos soportó el calor y eso es que cuando bajamos del vehículo vimos las personas que estaban alrededor, que estaban muertos, ¿verdad? Quemados, prácticamente estaban y buscaban personas que todavía estaban con vida, ¿va?
When I came home, I turned on the TV and they said, "We have a problem." But by then everyone was dead.
Miraculously, Eugenio and the team find 3 survivors. They're able to get the car started and rush them to hospital.
Pero lastimosamente 2 personas fallecieron en el camino. Gracias a Dios, ¿verdad? Que todavía una persona logramos salvarle la vida.
But with the ash settling, the total impact of El Fuego is yet to be felt.
Lahars are deadly. People get trapped and entombed in lahars.
The scope and magnitude of a volcanic eruption can be breathtaking. And the eruption of El Fuego is massive. The ash travels almost 20 kilometers. The ensuing pyroclastic flow burns everything in its path. While his wife, children, and nephews survive, 37 family members are killed.
Mi papá, mis primos, primas, los hijos de mis primos, mi suegra y mi cuñado. Adelante iban 2 primas que una de ellas se cayó y le digo, levántate porque ahí viene, corre ahí. Fallecieron también.
After 16 hours of violent eruptions, Fuego finally settles down. Entire villages are submerged. The remains of those who failed to escape litter the roads. Hundreds are missing or presumed dead. In the days that follow, volunteers mobilize to help emergency efforts.
That's when the military, the police, the firefighters, everyone went there. Problem was the road was covered with pyroclastic flows, so no one could access the community.
Dr. Tufts is one of the first medical personnel to arrive in Zone 0. Because of the dangerous conditions, it's closed to all but the military and select personnel.
Turned out we were the only medical people there. Nobody would enter the Zone 0. The bodies were still everywhere. They didn't look like bodies so much as they looked like a mold of a person because they were covered in ash. The first thing I noticed was the smell. I don't know, it's a smell you never forget. And you look up in the sky and you can see the vultures circling around. Even the pictures don't do justice to what kind of destruction this was. It was like a lunar landscape. And if you were in that particular area, there was no survivors. None. Very hard to swallow.
Aiden volunteers to assist in a nearby village just outside of Zone 0.
We took off, hopped in a truck, and went right to Alotenango, where a lot of the families were devastated with loss. There was Army tanks and first responders everywhere. Locals would tell us they lost their brother, they lost a son, they lost aunt and uncle. We try to help as much as possible.
My focus was immediately on trying to save as many of the people as we could, keeping the firemen healthy, so they could do their job. Then we had the survivors that we had to try to take care of. We had to put people to sleep because with burns, they're very painful, so it was easier just to give them an injection. They go to sleep for an hour, and then you could work on them without causing pain.
Over the next few days, El Fuego continues to erupt, triggering a secondary pyroclastic flow. Then, on June 9th, the skies darken and it begins to rain. Just when things can't get worse, they do. With a landscape covered in ash, sometimes meters thick, the threat of lahars looms.
The lahar is the phenomenon, which is where fresh volcanic ash is mixed with water. It's a bit like watery concrete that you've just mixed and is poured down slope. It's very destructive, and they can occur for years after an eruption, whenever there's a big rainstorm. Lahars are deadly because it's like being hit by a wall of liquid cement. People get trapped and entombed in lahars. They will push over buildings. They will knock down infrastructure.
It's very dangerous. People were running away because this time the rain was bringing down all the material that had just been set on the communities.
As the communities surrounding the volcano attempt to deal with the disaster, Sophia is one of the first volunteers gathering aid when she receives a heartbreaking request.
She said, well, I need you to find my family. And I said, okay, just give us their names and we'll try to find them in the shelters, see if they're in the hospital. And that's when she said, no, they died. 33 people in my family died, including my 2 kids, a boy and a girl, and I want you to find them for me.
With that, Sophia starts to recover bodies. In the affected zone, she's shocked by what she sees. The ash is so high, it's buried entire houses. It's so hot, it melts the soles of her shoes.
You see people digging for their loved ones with their hands, with wooden spoons, with whatever they could find. And then when they found them, they would put them in towels or whatever they could find to take them with them. You realize these people are looking for human beings and no one is helping them.
Ayudé a desenterrar a mis primos, primas, hijos de mis primos también. Había veces que no aguantaba.
So we had to start this whole operation of setting camp and security areas and safe spots and doing everything the best way possible. First came the machines who removed the rubble and stones and everything, stones as big as 10 meters or 15 meters. They removed everything. Then we started digging. What we gave them was the possibility of finding their loved ones. It was finding a needle in a haystack, and we were trying to do just that for them.
Months later, volunteers like Aiden, Sophia, and Dr. Tufts continue to help local communities cope with the tragedy. Aiden sets up a campaign to collect donations for the affected.
We were getting notifications saying our account was going viral. Just a large demographic of people just reaching out to us, donating money. We use a lot of the money to buy clothes, just little essentials.
Sophia organizes aid packages and reunites families with their lost loved ones.
We found 278 people. People that were not able to identify because they had no DNA left over, 112. People that were never found, 85.
Amidst the tragedy, there's reason to be thankful.
Sobrevivimos 8, mi esposa, mis 3 hijos, mi hermana y mis 2 sobrinos. Ahí sobrevivimos. En su momento que me sentía un poco tranquilo, una paz en el corazón de que pude encontrar a mucha más gente, vecinos, ¿verdad? Amigos, ¿verdad?
Two years after the tragedy, Sophia and Dr. Tufts continue to volunteer in the community.
One of the positive things that happened was that the entire country said, we need to help. And help was the most beautiful thing you could see.
Sophia comes to terms with the awesome and deadly El Fuego.
I love nature and I love a volcano, and for a while I was very upset because I kept on thinking, how can I love something that it caused so much damage? Then I realized the volcano was always there. It was always going to have eruptions. It was always going to be the beauty of nature exposed. I think nature's not at fault.
While the destruction by El Fuego forever impacted the lives of those living in its shadow, the total impact of eruptions around the world can also create strange, new phenomenon.
There are some lava tubes that contain life that is found nowhere else in the world.
Volcanoes, infamous masters of destruction. Yet they've also forged the world as we know it, sometimes creating incredible environments that almost seem out of this world. Searing molten rock can carve out underground worlds called lava tubes. These mysterious caves are teeming with beauty and life.
Lava tubes are caves that form naturally in lava flows, particularly lava flows of basaltic composition. Basalt is a dense, heavy rock that makes up the Earth's ocean floors and is also the most common type of rock found on planets, particularly Mars and Venus. These flows are very fluid, and as they pour down a landscape, they'll cool against the atmosphere and develop a crust.
As the outer layer of the lava cools and crusts, it forms a roof over top the lava flow. And when the eruption wanes, so does the amount of lava moving beneath.
This leaves a hollow passage behind that can be huge, big enough to drive a truck through.
Despite their name, these cavernous phenomena come in different shapes and sizes.
The term lava tube is a little bit misleading in the sense that it implies that these caves are shaped like the insides of hoses or pipes. But in fact, the shapes of the lava tubes can be quite complex and different. Some, for instance, have broad, flat roofs and floors and are quite wide. Others are slot-like or have the shapes of keyholes. They can occur at multiple levels, split into several stories, and also contain deep pits or chambers. They can stretch from a few hundred feet to tens of miles in length. And in fact, on the island of Hawaii, the Kazamura Cave stretches for over 45 miles. The beginnings of lava tubes, the entrances, may simply be accessed through pits in the ground where the ceiling has collapsed into a pile of rubble. People can clamber down into these dark passageways.
Some lava tubes are open for exploration. For those brave enough to descend into the darkness, treasures await.
There are mineral deposits that you may find on the walls. White gypsum, for instance, and other rare minerals.
The subterranean labyrinth created can reveal lava lakes, stalactites, stalagmites, and other signs of the tube's origins.
As the flow recedes, the lava is draining out from underneath the crust to leave a future cave passage. High water marks or stains on the wall may be left by the lava. So there is a clue to be seen in every cave passage that tells you a story peculiar to the origin and development of that particular cave.
Since their beginnings, these pitch-dark passageways have played a major role in life on islands around the world.
Lava tubes act as excellent insulators for the molten lava that flows through them. And this insulation allows the overall flow containing that lava tube travel much farther and spread more widely. This means that the islands that have lava tube forming volcanoes will be very wide and broad and have gentle slopes.
Volcanic islands are historically highly desirable places to live.
Because of lava tube formation, these wide islands, such as those in the Hawaiian chain, are easily habitable. Good climate and soil that breaks down from lava itself, some of the richest in the world.
The tubes themselves have been used by humans for centuries.
Lava tubes have played an important role in the history of humankind. Indigenous peoples have used them as shelters to take during times of conflict, places to camp. They've been used for places to store items and also for burials.
But humans aren't the only beings who benefit from lava tubes. These caves also act as a cradle for other life forms.
Lava tubes also have an important biological function. Creatures that move into these habitats evolve to function quite successfully in these environments. There are some lava tubes that contain insect life that is found nowhere else in the world.
Because of their unique ability to maintain a stabilized environment, lava tubes have recently caught the attention of space scientists.
Recently, lava tubes have become an interesting potential resource recognized by space scientists who are interested in looking into setting up laboratories or exploration posts on other planets, such as Mars. A lava tube has the advantage in an environment like this of having a very steady microclimate relative to the exterior. It's sheltered or protected from the ultraviolet radiation from the sun.
As scientists investigate how lava tubes could play a role in interplanetary exploration, the total impact of volcanoes can reveal otherworldly experiences in unexpected places right here on Earth. While the eruptions of the Hawaiian volcanoes fascinate researchers, 5,000 kilometers southwest, near the Kingdom of Tonga, sailors Michael and Larissa encounter the mysterious effects of a volcanic eruption in the middle of the ocean.
We just left Bora Bora in French Polynesia 7 days earlier, and we were on a direct passage to Fiji.
As they're sailing, they cross the Tonga Trench. At over 10,000 meters deep, it's the second deepest trench in the world. Located along the Ring of Fire, the trench runs parallel to the boundary of two of the Earth's tectonic plates, the Pacific Ocean and the Indo-Australian Plate. Thousands of meters below them, Michael and Larissa have no idea what's about to explode from the abyss.
We'd been sailing all day, and then during the evening before it was dark, we saw some little bits and pieces of something floating in the water and hitting the boat.
They're surprised to see porous rocks bobbing along the surface of the water. After gathering a few as keepsakes, the couple continue on course toward Fiji. As night falls, Michael takes the first shift while Larissa sleeps.
Michael came and woke me up. There was something floating in the water and hitting the boat. We could just hear this noise along the side of the boat.
Larissa notices the smell of sulfur, and looking out into the dark waters, she sees something strange.
Under the moonlight, it looked like a desert, and the waves were just knocked back to this really slow kind of wave effect over the ocean.
They find themselves in a vast sea of floating rocks.
They are completely flocked together, maybe up to 200-300 millimeters thick on the water, and you cannot see the ocean anymore. It changes the behavior of the waves, and there's a lot of noise coming off them grinding against each other, and it's really like a flexible floating island desert.
The Tonga Trench is home to the longest chain of underwater volcanoes in the world. And just 40 meters underwater, an unnamed volcano near the Kingdom of Tonga had erupted.
Most of the volcanoes in Tonga are actually underwater. There's only a few volcanoes that have made the beautiful conical islands that we typically associate with volcanoes.
As underwater volcanoes spew hot magma into the water, rapid cooling and depressurization creates bubbles by lowering the boiling point of the lava. This violent underwater eruption produces pumice rock. For Michael and Larissa, the recent eruption has put them in the middle of a 120-kilometer wide raft of pumice stone, larger than Manhattan.
As sailors, you're prepared to navigate storms and you have weather forecasting to do so, but you never expect to sail into a subsea volcano. Like, it's not something that can be really forecast, even by the scientists.
People don't often hear about the eruptions or the rafts because the volcanoes are in very remote locations. But also a lot of those volcanoes occur underwater, so pumice rafts are often our only record of that eruption.
One of history's largest pumice rafts was created by the infamous eruption of the Krakatoa volcano off the coast of Indonesia in 1883. The eruption was one of the deadliest in recorded history. The pumice produced clogged harbors and was seen in the Indian Ocean a year later.
Back in the 1883 eruption from Krakatoa, the observations reported trees being supported on the pumice rafts. In the middle of the Indian Ocean, many months after the eruption, boats were passing through these fields of pumice more than 1,000 miles in length. The pumice is still so thick that sailors are actually able to get out and stand fully supported on this pumice in the middle of the Indian Ocean.
These large-scale rafts are not only fascinating, they can also pose a serious threat.
This had made a really good decision for us to take all the sails down and slow right down. So we were just floating along, not too fast, in case we did find a big rock in there that would damage the boat. We had a quick discussion about trying to continue through it, but the fear is there could be something as big as a car or a fridge or a house that could crack our boat and sink us.
And really tiny pieces too, so you can't really start the engines, or you'd be sucking, really tiny pieces into the engine as well.
As was seen after the Krakatoa eruption, hazardous pumice floats can travel thousands of kilometers around the world on ocean currents.
Pumice rafts can float at the ocean surface. They are driven by ocean currents, and therefore pumice can float thousands to tens of thousands of kilometers across the world's oceans.
Scientists are discovering that these mysterious anomalies could hold the key to the long-distance dispersion of many species of plants and animals around the world.
From our studies, we've identified over 100 different species attached to the pumice. Bryozoans, corals, worms, mollusks, crabs, you name it. So each piece of pumice is like its own little community, if you like, that is being transported across the world's oceans. And when we have trillions of pieces of pumice floating out there from an eruption, this diversity of species that is being transported thousands of kilometres in only a matter of months is really quite phenomenal.
As climate change warms the world's oceans, killing corals, floating pumice rafts could offer a small lifeline, carrying new life long distances to endangered reef systems like the Great Barrier Reef.
This is a way that corals that might be living out in Fiji or Tonga, their larvae can attach the pumice and then 7 or 8 months later find their way and end up on the Great Barrier Reef in Eastern Australia. The pumice rafts won't directly mitigate climate change effects on the Great Barrier Reef, but what it is doing is every 5 years or so, it is bringing in a new flux of reef-building organisms, corals, bryozoans, coralline algae, calcareous algae, that are being brought in huge numbers, and with the ability to restock damaged reefs. It's almost like a vitamin shot for the Great Barrier Reef. So it's about this restocking, repopulating in a very natural mechanism by pumice rafts that allows the Great Barrier Reef to be more resilient to then combat and recover from any impacts from climate change.
Michael and Larissa, stranded in an ocean of floating rocks and unable to start the motor, managed to raise the sails and escape.
After we got clear of the pumice raft, we managed to sail around it in the dark, and by the next morning we were well clear of it and on our way.
The pumice rocks that Michael and Larissa collected are now being used to better understand subsea volcanoes.
We're currently investigating these samples very carefully. And in particular, we're going to be looking at the textures, the chemistry of the pumice, which are frozen snapshots of the magma in the chamber that sits beneath that volcano, to really understand what's going on. Pumice rafts are a very fascinating phenomenon. We have life interacting with that pumice, looking for a new home, being transported around the world's oceans. So it's really this interaction of deep earth, oceans, atmospheric processes, and biology all coming together in this one phenomenon.
Mother Nature, she's always in power, basically. The coral reefs around the world are suffering, and then an event like this happens totally unexpected, and it can rejuvenate the reefs and bring new life. So that's really special.
Along with the biodiversity that pumice can bring to ocean life, scientists are now discovering new ways that volcanoes can communicate imminent and deadly eruptions. As long as humans live in the shadow of volcanoes, their eruptions will continue to cause destruction and death. But scientists are searching for better ways to forecast when they'll roar to life and reduce the devastation. David specializes in volcano voice print recognition.
Each volcano has its own voice, and each one produces really unique types of sounds. So just like you have a resonating wave in a musical instrument producing a certain type of sound, we can have the same thing inside a volcano. For a volcano to produce sound, it needs to erupt, and it needs to have some sort of open pathway to the surface. So if there's just magma underground moving around, that will just be producing seismic waves. But as soon as the volcano opens up and releases pressure, then it can produce a sound wave.
Recording their voices entails recording infrasound from the volcano. Like infrasounds produced by elephants and whales to communicate over long distances, these low-frequency sound waves can't be heard by humans, but they can be felt as vibrations.
So what we're recording with infrasound is generally between the lava surface and the atmosphere.
The sound waves, made by vibrations traveling through volcano passageways, reveal details about the shape of the volcano's crater and if the lava levels are rising.
If the lava is rising within the crater, we can often detect that.
Because infrasound is produced at incredibly low frequencies, well below the threshold for human hearing, scientists are able to set up at safe distances from the volcano.
The really useful thing about infrasound is that it can travel very long distances. These low-frequency sound waves can travel thousands of kilometers. We can put out an array of microphones or sensors and can monitor over a broad region. These pressure sensors or microphones will record the sound, and then once it's back at our lab, we can analyze it. We can set up these algorithms to detect eruptions.
Early detection means more warning time for eruptions.
We can help communities that live around volcanoes by very rapidly detecting an eruption and telling you how big that eruption is.
While studying volcanic voices is a relatively new avenue for volcanology, it shows a lot of promise. Currently, it's best used in combination with other technologies. Robert studies and interprets satellite imagery.
Anything that affects a change on the surface of the Earth, you'll be able to see with Planet Satellite. Planet's data is useful because we're viewing the entire Earth every day. So that really gives a big picture of how the Earth is evolving over time. For volcanic eruptions, we can help monitor an eruption as it is ongoing. So with satellite data, you could actually map where they were going. By knowing where a dome is growing and how big it's getting, as well as being able to map the area of a volcano and look for channels that this material might flow down, you can really help mitigate the risk and sort of be able to predict where these flows will occur.
In the future, combining satellite tech with volcano voice recognition could be the answer to saving countless lives. For now, volcanoes still remain vastly shrouded in mystery.
El volcán, o sea, no avisa cuando esto sucede, cuando no avisa en un momento. Cuando un momento u otro, pues, da la erupción. No avisa cuando realmente ocurre un gran desastre, ¿verdad?
Volcanoes. Deadly. Destructive. Terrifying. Yet volcanoes have played a crucial role in shaping the Earth. And their total impact includes the formation of islands, lava tubes, and pumice rafts that can help spread life around the planet. And while there is no way to control them, in the future, listening to the voices of volcanoes may allow us to live more safely amongst these towering titans.